In and around 2016 or 17, we were heading down to the DeLorean car show in Chicago, and I had taken some train wheels that I had built for some friends of ours, and we were going to put them on their time machine and give them a test before they took them out to California for their event. I worked in a body shop for most of my life, so I seemed to gravitate towards wrecked cars, and I've had a couple wrecked DeLoreans myself. My friend Ken had told me about a crash test car in Indiana. And on the way back, this is the first time he told me a little bit about the story. He gave me the guy's number and address and said, try and make contact because he's more or less disappeared on us. So we did, and nothing ever came of it. But I always fantasized about this car, wondering what it looked like. And we had no pictures or anything of it. We just sort of forgot about it after a while. I have a time machine myself, and me and the wife were doing an event. My phone rings, and it's Ken, and he says, get the trailer, we're going to Indiana. So we looked at some flights and it made more sense for us to just drive. It was a 7 or 8 hour drive. Once everything was in order, we hooked up the truck and trailer. I think it was on a Friday after work. Took off for Detroit to pick Ken up at the airport and stayed the night. And then sure enough, the next day we showed up at Dennis's house and there the car was sitting there. And at the time he said it only rolls backwards, which was okay because it was facing back out the door. So we got it on the trailer. That was a once we get a home problem. Well, yeah, especially like when a lot of these guys first had the opportunity to grab these cars in the 80s, they weren't worth anything. And especially when DeLorean was closing down there wasn't any historical value at the time. So the fact that Dennis stuck it away in the corner of his garage and like we never actually see, he was cleaning out by the time we got there, but his wife was telling us that you couldn't really see this car for a lot of years. It was in the back corner covered pretty good. So it's great that it was saved there. So we loaded up all this stuff. We had one shipper come and pick up one of the driving car. It wasn't a driving car. It was a complete car, we should say. We loaded the wrecked car onto my truck and trailer and then loaded a bunch of parts into the bed of the truck and we took off home. Once we got home, I found out later that the reason the car wouldn't roll forward is because when they took the transmission governor off the side of the transmission, they jammed a rag in there and it was getting hung up in the gears. So that was easy to get it off the trailer later, but in the middle of the night, it was a little bit tricky to figure out in the first place. The interesting thing about 515 is that the Transportation Board put out a contract to Fitzpatrick Engineering, and they were looking for a production-ready small car. It had to be under 3,000 pounds, and they were testing their airbag systems, their computer systems they were building at the time. From what I gather about it is they were figuring out computer modeling in its early stages, and they had to actually do a physical test to make sure these models were working. So 515 was the 35 mile an hour crash test car, and its final speed was 36 miles an hour when it hit the wall. When Ken first told me that we could go down and get this car finally, we weren't sure what to expect. And when I've seen the first picture of it, my heart sort of sank at what was left of it. But the fact that the car still exists to me is cool, just in being there. When they started to put the airbags into the DeLorean, the first problem they had was the steering wheel. The stock DeLorean steering wheel was too small to fit in an airbag. So what they did was they took a 79 Volvo GT steering wheel and it fit onto the DeLorean column. And then they retrofitted, it was a round airbag into the center and then duals on the passenger side and mounted it to the dash frame after taking out some of the dash. And then my understanding is they stopped the column from stroking. So it was showing the full effect of the airbag itself on the occupants. And to my knowledge, they also didn't strap the dummies in. They just let them fly around. It's pretty crazy the amount of damage. Like I did a quick measurement and it's hard to tell because the wheels are all so crooked and all that. But compared to my time machine, the wheelbase is about 6 inches shorter than a stock car. And the center of the frame is actually, it's an X-frame DeLorean, if you haven't seen it. The center of the frame is actually pushed up through the body and protruding upwards. Now, that being said, a lot of people see these videos and think that it's total carnage, But the DeLoreans actually did fare quite well in their crash test in protecting the occupants. Part of the problem you see on the 40 mile an hour crash test videos is, and they even said it in the report, they couldn't get the door to latch. When you watch the videos of that car actually crashing, they really don't do the car in a crash test justice, because Fitzpatrick was just purely looking at the science of the airbag in those videos. Yeah, we've wrecked DeLoreans, and I don't know how many people have actually got hurt, but the airbags do seem to slow them down. I personally would not want to be in there when it took place, but to watch the front end of that car crumple is quite impressive as it comes in. But like I say, the occupants do fly forward, but not that I'm an expert in it, but the bags seem to do what they were intended to do. So to my knowledge, they supplied the information to the Transportation Safety Board. And I'm not sure who exactly was working on the computer systems and the modeling for this, whether it was Fitzpatrick that was actually doing that, or whether they were just hired to prove or disprove whether it was functioning or not. All the pictures I've seen of factory crash test cars, to my knowledge, they've all been with fiberglass panels. They haven't been 100% complete production cars. These were the two 515 and 517 were fully complete production cars. So to my knowledge, they are the only production car that was crashed. A lot of people say they're hard to get parts for, but they're really not. You can pick up the phone and buy just about anything for those cars. There is some hard to find stuff like left front fenders. Stories I've heard is they had all these extra parts for cars that they never ended up making, but there was supplier issues that weren't getting paid, so they were holding back parts and all sorts of stuff like that. And there's all sorts of rumors, but there's early hoods are hard to get. But like a later hood, I can go buy from DeLorean right now cheaper than I probably can for a lot of new cars. And still original in a crate. They've got stacks of all of it sitting there. So, and there's actually a big aftermarket for it. I personally find the DeLorean to be a fairly easy car to restore, especially because you don't have to paint the thing. A lot of people say that they got into DeLoreans for the story and they're not Back to the Future fans, but I'll straight up say it. Back to the Future, what brought me to DeLoreans. The story after is equally as amazing. I was getting into different cars. I was buying some here and there, and I always wanted a DeLorean, and I had sold an 86 Mustang that I had and an 85 Bronco, and I thought this is the time I'm going to do it. So I bought my first DeLorean. It came out of Chicago and brought it home, enjoyed it, and I worked at a body shop at the time, and someone had come in and said, "There's one of those in my barn." So sure enough, we went down and looked at it. It was a wrecked car. The story's a bit on the fence as to what exactly happened to it, but it had 5,200 original miles on it. Everything that wasn't wrecked was absolutely beautiful on that car. So the wife and I brung it home, did a full nut and bolt restoration on that. And that was my first one. After that was finished, we let the car go. And I ended up restoring a car for Ken after that because he wrecked another one. After that, I got a rusty one from down south. We did a frame-off restoration on that as well. And I'm currently building one for myself. It was wrecked in, I think it was 1983, the main highway going through Toronto, the Don Valley Parkway. The story is it was put into the wall backwards in a snowstorm. And then it was sent to a junkyard that was actually just down the street from my house. Someone picked it up, cut the back end clear off of it. There was nothing from the doors back. It sat out in behind a dealership not too far from my house. There was rumors of the car existing, but no one actually tracked down owners or really seen the car. It was all just hearsay. And then that dealership was selling, and it just happened to be on Marketplace, and I was there at the right time. So I brought it home and doing an engine swap on it. It was missing so many parts. I felt okay about making a custom one for myself. I fixed a lot of them for other people, and I wanted to do one for me that would be my good daily driver. A lot of people say that the DeLoreans aren't really a reliable car, but that's partly on the owner. The K-Jet and all that is just so finicky if you let it sit. If you let that car sit, it gets angry, and then not too many people know how to fix it, and the car just sits and gets a bad name. But I don't like it myself, so that's why I'm swapping in a newer motor. I'm using a 2.2 Ecotech out of a Cavalier. I wasn't going for huge power or anything, but when I was in high school, I was into the Sunfires and Cavaliers, so I still had a turbo kit and all that kicking around, so it fit in there nicely with the little 4-cylinder. There's plenty of space in the back. I can use the stock transmission with an updated input coupler, and with the turbo, you're not going to make a ton of torque right off so you're not going to destroy anything, but it should have a lot more go than a stock car did, and start every time I turn the key.
We'd like to thank this month's sponsor of the VinWiki YouTube channel, Minta Watches. We know the world of great cars and great watches tends to overlap a lot, and Minta specializes in remarkable timepieces, both vintage and modern, because they know that great watches also have great stories. So if you're looking for some entertaining and educational watch content, be sure to check out Adam's YouTube channel. And if you're in the market for a watch or you just want to learn more about watches, be sure to reach them at the link in the description below. They'll take great care of you.